The Buddha said, "When those 77 koti of Tathagatas, Arhats, Samyak Sambuddhas are speaking this Dharani, in one of the pores on the body of Avalokitesvara, which is called sunlight, there are immeasurable hundreds of thousands of millions of kotis of nayutas of bodhisattvas. Inside that sunlight pore, there are also 12,000 gold mountains. Each of those mountains has 1,200 peaks and is adorned with lotus and colorful jewels around it. Around those mountains there are also heavenly mani pearls and happy gardens. Inside that pore there are also immeasurable hundreds of thousands of millions of golden, precious, sublime edifices with hundreds of thousands of clothes, pearls, and jade-like jewelries hanging over them. Inside those edifices there are many delicate and wonderful wish-granting pearls which offer all needed materials for those bodhisattvas. At this time, those bodhisattvas entered into the edifices and chanted the 6 words, Great Enlightening Dharani, and then they saw the stage of nirvana. Having reached the stage of nirvana, they saw the Tathagata and also saw Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, and then they became joyful. After that, those bodhisattvas went out from the edifices and walked around the precious gardens and went to the bath pools. Afterward, they went to the lotus-colored precious mountain, stayed at one side, sat cross-legged in the lotus position, and entered into samadhi. Virtuous man, those are the bodhisattvas dwelling in that sunlight pore. The Buddha said, and there is another pore called Sakra Divanam Indra King. Inside it there are immeasurable hundreds of thousands of millions of kotis of nayutas of non-retrograde bodhisattvas. Inside that Sakra Divanam Indra King pore there are also 80,000 heavenly gold and precious mountains. In those mountains there is a wish-granting Mani called Lotus Light, which gives those bodhisattvas whatever they want according to their thoughts. In those mountains, the bodhisattvas can get any drinks and foods as long as they have a thought of wanting them. They do not worry about or suffer from transmigration and constantly concentrate on their bodies without any other thoughts. Virtuous man, there is also a pore named Great Medicine. Inside it, there are immeasurable hundreds of thousands of millions of kotis of nayutas of initial resolve bodhisattvas. Virtuous man, there are 99,000 mountains inside that pore. In those mountains there are Vajra precious caves, gold precious caves, silver precious caves, Indra Nilamukta precious caves, lotus-colored precious caves, green precious caves, Sphatika-colored precious caves. Each of those mountain kings has 80,000 peaks, adorned with myriad of wish-granting Mani and various wonderful jewelries. Inside those peaks there are many Gandharvas who often perform music. Those initial resolve bodhisattvas often meditate on emptiness, non-form, no self, the suffering of being born, the suffering of aging, the suffering of having illness, the suffering of death, the suffering of being separated from what we love, the suffering of being associated with what we dislike, the suffering of falling into a Vici hell, the suffering of the sentient beings in Black Rope's hell, the suffering of the sentient beings in the destinies such as hungry ghosts, and so on. When meditating on those things, they are staying at those mountains, sitting cross-legged in the lotus position, and then enter into samadhis. Virtuous man, there is another pore named Painting King. Inside it there are immeasurable hundreds of thousands of millions of kotis of nayutas of pratyeka Buddhas who are emitting flaming light. Inside that pore there are hundreds of thousands of millions of mountain kings, which are adorned with the 7 jewels. On those mountain kings there are various kalpataru trees. Their leaves are made of gold or silver, and they are adorned with innumerable hundreds kinds of treasures. Moreover, many precious crowns, jade ornaments, clothes, various precious necklaces, various precious bells, and Kausika clothes are hanging over those trees, and the gold bells and silver bells are tinkling. Those mountains are full of such Kalpataru trees. Innumerable Pratyeka Buddhas are dwelling there, constantly expounding the sutras, repeating verses, insignia awarding verses, parables, Jataka causal stage lives, the corrective and extensive dharmas, etc. Eliminate obstructions. At this time, those Pratyeka Buddhas came out of that pore. Finally, there is a pore named Streamer King, which is 80,000 yojana in width and length. Inside it there are 80,000 mountains, adorned with various wonderful treasures and wish-fulfilling manis. On those mountains there are innumerable Kalpataru trees, innumerable hundreds of thousands of millions of sandalwood trees, and innumerable hundreds of thousands of millions of huge trees. There are also diamond precious grounds, and there are 99 edifices with hundreds of thousands of millions of gold, treasures, pearls, precious necklaces, clothes hanging over them. So this is the scene in that pore. Having spoken to eliminate obstructions Bodhisattva, the Buddha said to Ananda, "For anyone who does not know the karma retributions of spitting, urinating, defecating, or doing other bad things in sublime abodes, namely temples, monasteries, etc., now I am telling you the retributions. If anyone spits onto the ground, he will be reborn as a needle-mouthed insect in a sala tree for 12 years. If anyone urinates or defecates onto the ground of Sangha abodes, namely temples, monasteries, etc., he will be reborn as a nasty worm in urine or excrements in Varanasi big city. If anyone uses the teeth woods without permission, he will be reborn as a tortoise, fish, or makara fish. If anyone steals the oils, hemps, rice, beans, or other things of monks, he will be reborn as a hungry ghost, with unkempt head hair, staring body hair, mountain-like big paunch, needle-like narrow throat, and will be burnt out with only the bones remaining. The retribution of this person is so miserable. If anyone despises or disdains sanghas, he will be reborn in a poor and low family, and wherever he will be born, he will not have a good look or good body. His body will be hunchbacked, bended, and short. After the lifetime in such a body, in the next lifetime he will be thin and will have many illnesses. His arms and feet will be crooked. Brimful pus and bloods will be flowing on his body. He will suffer from these miserable retributions for hundreds of thousands of myriads of years. If anyone steals Sangha's lands, he will fall into the great howling hell, swallowing the iron balls. His lips, teeth, palates, and throat will all be burnt out. His heart, liver, intestines, stomach, and his whole body will also be burning. Subsequently, a karma wind will blow to him and make him relive, and then Yama jailers will drive and force this sinner. Affected by his own karma, he will have a huge tongue, with hundreds of thousands of myriads of iron plows furrowing on it. Having suffered from such miserable retributions for thousands of myriads of years, and gotten out of this hell, he will then enter into the great fire cauldron hell. And there the Yama jailers will drive and force the sinner, sting his tongue with hundreds of thousands of myriads of needles. Due to the karma force, he will not die. The jailers then will drive him to the fire pits and throw him into them, and then drive him to the hopeless river and throw him into it, and he still will not die. In a similar way, he will pass through many other hells for 3 kalpas. Afterward, this person will be born in a poor and low family in the southern continent Jambudvipa and will be blind. These retributions are really painful, so be careful. Do not steal any property of sanghas. For the precept-keeping bhikshus, they should accept and uphold the 3 robes. When they enter into the king's palace, they should dress the first great robe. When they are in the assembly of Sanghas, they should dress the second robe. When they are working, in villages, towns, cities, or walking, they should dress the third robe. Bhikshus should accept and uphold the three robes in such a way. Then, if they attain the precepts, they will also attain merits and wisdom. I say that bhikshus should keep precepts and should not steal any property of Sanghas. For example, if a person is constantly dwelling in a fire pit or have taken a heavy burden of poison, he can still be saved. But if he steals the properties of Sanghas, he will not be able to be saved. At that time, Wise Life Ananda said to the Bhagavan, "We will fully study and practice as the Buddha taught. Bhikshus should accept and uphold the precepts. Earnestly stay in and protect the teachings of the Bhagavans." Afterward, Wise Life Ananda bowed at the feet of the Buddha, circumambulated the Buddha, and then withdrew. The great voice hearers Shravakas returned back to their dwellings severally. The gods, dragons, yaksas, Gandharvas, Asuras, Garudas, Kinnaras, Mahoragas, human and non-human beings of all worlds, hearing what the Buddha had said, were very joyful. They believed and accepted it, made obeisance to the Buddha, and withdrew. End of translation.